Hey everyone. So right now I'm just testing out sign in, and there's a little bit of weird behavior. If we do a sign in like normal, this is what we're expecting to do, how we're formatting the errors in a way. And but if you try to do it again, like sign in again, you'll get I mean for you your app will actually crash. I did a little bit of testing and formatted the error because what comes back in the error response is actually a string and not an object, so things will blow up. So that's what we're gonna start the video with. We're gonna format some errors, and the current behavior is this. I'm first checking the type of data, and if it's a string, we're just gonna create a array with that string. Otherwise, we'll do the normal flat map thing that we were doing earlier. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna make a new file. I'm gonna call that new file errors.ts, and I'm putting it inside of a new directory called utils. And in that file, I'm going to create a utility function called format errors. And format errors is going to return us an array of strings. What we're going to pass into it is going to be the data property from the error response from Axios. And we don't actually know what type the data is coming in. That's why we're going to annotate it with any. And then we're going to port over the logic of formatting the errors. Instead of assignment here, we're going to return the error array. And back in our action, we could clean up this code so that state.auth.errors is using our utility function. And that looks a lot better. Now we can also update our other actions and set the errors using our new utility function like this. In our profile state, we can also add errors as a property with the default of nothing, and then replace all of these console logs with formatting our errors. So now that whenever a request fails, we can actually do something meaningful and useful inside of our application. Now that we're inside the profile state file, we can now add the following and unfollowing feature of profiles. So I'm going to make a new function called follow user. The value that we're going to pass in is username, which is going to be of type string, and that's where we're going to call the effects of follow user. And we can make another function for unfollow user. For both of these functions, we don't have to manipulate state directly since we already wrote that code up here for get user. So instead, what I'm going to do is, instead of getting state, we're going to get actions. And we're just going to call that action here. So actions.profile.getUser. And we'll also pass in the username. We probably should add a try-catch block for these. Alright, let's make use of these in the profile component. So inside of the profile component, the button's going to go right here. Second thought, I'm going to make another component for the follow user button. I'm actually going to call it the profile button. This way we can have one profile button component for three possible states, which is if it's the current user's profile, if it's a user that they already follow, or if they need to unfollow them. And then we're going to add the normal Bootstrap button classes, so BTN small and BTN secondary and all of that. And then I added a placeholder span for the icon that we're going to use. We're going to update this in a bit, and we're also going to update the button text. Right now it's just a stub. I think the properties that we want to determine what kind of button it is a button type, which I've set as an enum for follow, unfollow, and settings, and then also the username, since we're going to need that. So for the text, if it's the current user, we're going to say edit profile settings, and if it's not, we're going to say the type, so follow or unfollow, followed by the username. And I'm just adding two locale uppercase here just because we want to capitalize it. Oh, that makes things a lot easier. And then for icon, we're going to do the same thing, except it's going to be a gear for settings and then a plus for follow and unfollow. I was expecting it to be minus, but... And then back in the profile component, we could add the profile button here. Add the username as user.username. So user.username is possibly undefined, so I updated the interface to take an optional username. Since it's going to be converted to a string anyways, I don't think we need to actually add any safety to it because HTML will just convert undefined to an empty string. So for type, we need to know if this is the current user or not. So I'm going to make a new variable called isCurrentUser. And I'm going to assign it to true if it is. Following, that means this is unfollow, else it will be profile.follow. Alright, so this is a little confusing since it's a nested ternary, but if it's the current user, then we'll return settings. If not, then we'll check user.following, and if we're following them, the button is going to say unfollow or follow. Also, there's a red squiggly line here because this user here is possibly any. So I'm gonna set it as profile response, and I'm also gonna cast the current user to profile response for this case. And now we're using this before the user's assigned, so I'm gonna change the order of this ternary so that we won't have to worry about this. Okay, so now we're gonna display the profile if the user exists and if it's not loading. Otherwise, we'll return loading. And then I also set an initial value of null just so that we have something to render before the state's been assigned. It's a little complicated, but it'll get the job done. Okay, so let's see if we can test this out. I'm currently logged in, so I'm gonna go to slash, what is my guy's name? It's Fuser name, right? So there we are, and alright, these buttons don't work yet. Yeah, let's do that. So for follow and unfollow, we know that we want to get that from the use overmind hook, and then when it's the current user, we want to send them to the settings page. So for that, I'm going to use the use navigate hook from reach router, and then we'll be getting them in like this, and we're going to create a onClick method for the button, and then the button's going to have 3 different possible outcomes based on the profile button type. So we're going to do a switch, and the property condition is going to be type. Let's go with defaults. We'll do nothing, so we'll just do return. So for the settings type, it's going to just do a navigate to /settings. And for follow and unfollow, we're going to be calling follow user and unfollow user respectively. And I guess we'll wrap everything around an if username just to make sure that there's that check that the username does exist. And if you want, you could do a deeply nested destructuring to get follow user and unfollow user. So then you can call these methods without all those dots. And then finally, we'll just add it to the onClick method. So just do onClick, and that should do it. Back in our app, we could check. So this is going to take us to settings, which it does. And then if we go to a user that's not us, there we are, and there's a follow. And it does, in fact, although we should tweak it. I don't want this to be uppercase. I want it to be capitalized. So let's do that. And that's good enough. I'm just going to do the string of type at the first character to uppercase it, and then follow it by the substring, so the rest of the string after that. And then if we go back, and it looks like that, which is exactly what we want. And then unfollow user looks good as well. And then us is going to be username, which has the thing. And then also I added a space at the beginning just so we have proper spacing between the text and the icon. We're 9 minutes in and I haven't started articles yet. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video where I finally do that. Bye.